Hello, thank you for joining me on my dive on the Prins Willem, aka the Willie. Here are a couple of pictures of her on the surface so you can get a sense of what she looked like back in her day, as well as the best schematics that I have been able to find. If you have better ones, I would appreciate you sharing them with me. But this is as good as it gets as far as I'm aware. Obviously you can pause this video to get a better sense as to what you're looking at, but we come back to my descent right as the Willie starts to come into view. I am on a rebreather on this dive, and part of my bailout plan is that I'm carrying a bottle of 50%. Obviously I have another bailout with me at all times on the dive, but I'm going to stage my 50% bottle here on the anchor line to give me more gas, as well as a better deco option if I do in fact need to bail out. I don't, but it's there if I need it. So as I stage that, I'll give you a little bit of an idea of my dive plan for this dive. This is my first time on the Willie in a couple of years, and my first time in the Great Lakes this season. So this dive, my plan was to just kind of refamiliarize myself, kind of keep it easy. I'm going to swim the perimeter of the wreck, just getting a familiarization of what's where, and reminding myself of where entry points are and where the various areas to penetrate and investigate are. So a lot of this dive is just me circling the wreck, but I do some penetration as well, and that's always a good time. If you have not watched any of my previous videos, I'm not trying to tell a story, although I tell plenty of story, but I'm not, this is the story of my dive now. This is more of a research video. It's the video that I'm looking for when I'm researching a wreck that I'm planning on diving. So I don't stop the camera. I record every part of the dive. As long as the camera's battery lasts, I'm recording until I hit the surface, more or less. And it's so that you can watch it and kind of dive this dive before you dive this dive. You can get a sense as to what she looks like, what's where, what you want to check out, where you want to penetrate. This is to help you plan your dive so that you can then go and dive your plan. This is not meant to be instructional. This is not meant for you to follow my plan. This is not meant to encourage you to go in somewhere that you don't belong. This is just me recording my dive, one, so that I can help you if you're planning your own, but two, so that I can rewatch my dive, see what I missed, plan my next dive on the Willie, because certainly I'm going to be going out on her again. So it's right about here that I regret not bringing my scooter. That didn't take long. The reason I didn't was because I really wanted to just get a big giant overview of this wreck and investigate little bits and pieces. I didn't want to go here and then finish the portion of the dive there and zip over to this other place and do a part of the dive there and then zip over to this third place. This was, even as I say that out loud now, the scooter would have been a good idea. Yeah, what are you going to do? Here you can see the bottom of Lake Michigan and how she just, by crashing into it, just changed the bottom, just created this giant crevice in the lake. You'll get more of a sense of that as we go along, how it's primarily flat until this boat made a big dent. All that texture you're seeing on the wreck, that's a combination of zebra and quagga mussels. They are an invasive species into the Great Lakes, and they just cover everything. The downside is that you no longer see the wreck itself. You're just seeing the zebra and quagga mussels on top of the wreck. It's like seeing it all entirely blanketed by these invasive species. But the thing that they have done that has been appreciated by divers is that they've really cleaned up the visibility of the Great Lakes. The visibility that you're seeing here is much better than it would have been 20 years ago, and we have these mussels to thank for that. So like pretty much everything in life, it comes with pros and cons, these little guys. So this is the stern of the ship. She lies on her starboard side, and she is at an angle, as you can see, which can make for a lot of fun, but it can also create for confusion. As you can see, walls aren't even ceilings and floors. You're kind of, if you do any sort of penetrating, you're going into more of a diamond shape than what you're used to seeing in a structure. And if you've not done that, that really can create some confusion and disorientation. So the Prins Willem V, or 5, where's that 10? I'm not Roman, I don't know my numerals. Was constructed as a St. Lawrence Canal-sized steel-hulled 5-cylinder diesel-powered packet freighter, so she could trade between Northern Europe ports and the Great Lakes. I'm getting this information from wisconsinshipwrecks.org, which is a fantastic website if you're looking for information on wreck sites in the Wisconsin waters. In May of 1940, the German forces stopped construction about 2/3 of the way through of the Willie. The keel was laid in 1939, but she was not completed until 1948, and that delay is because the Nazis had intentionally sunk her. So this is her at least second time on the bottom, right? They sunk her near the shore of Rotterdam Harbor, and the intention was to impede the liberating forces by blocking a crucial waterway. After the war, she was brought back to the surface, cleaned up, and construction was completed so that she could continue on as her intended charters, carrying cargo back and forth between the Great Lake ports and Northern European ports. Poor girl spent more time on the bottom of bodies of water than she did on the surface. Construction was completed in 1948, and it was in October 14th, in fact, of 1954, that she departed Milwaukee for her final voyage. One of the things I like about this wreck is that she sank on my dad's birthday. Not just his birthday, but the literal day of his birth. You certainly don't care about that, but I do. I think it's just kind of a fun little fact. You saw there that I turned on my spotted flashlight, my primary, and I dimmed it down. A little trick. The reason I do that is because on the video, it shows up appropriately exposed. It's not this big giant beam of light and this giant bright spot in my frame. It doesn't help me nearly as much on the dive as it would if it were brighter, but it helps out the video a great deal. So at some points on my dives, I turn it up to the power that I need it on for the dive, because my safety during the dive takes precedent over the video. But if I can afford to, I dim it down so that it works on the video better. And as we've passed part of the structure here, you can see that there were multiple places where the crew would have gone, and where you're now able to penetrate if you are properly trained and qualified and experienced. But if not, staying on the outside of this wreck is a great way to enjoy it in the way that you should, because it's when you go inside that the risks become greater. The Prins Willem is one of the favorite dive sites in the Milwaukee waters, and I think you can see why. I mean, it's this really interesting wreck. She sits on her side. That's kind of fun. She's a real wreck. She wasn't intentionally sunk. She sits in above 100 feet or less than 100 feet of water, so recreational divers are easily able to dive this site and enjoy this wreck. There's plenty to see. It's a larger vessel, so again, there's plenty to see, and so divers of all categories, of all levels, really enjoy diving this wreck. It's a good time, especially when you're with a good group of divers. It's not too far of a boat ride out from the Milwaukee harbor to get here, so it's just enough time to have some good laughs, tell some good jokes, beat up on your best friend a little bit, and then you need to start to gear up. So like I said, on October 14th, 1954, right as my dad was being born, the Willie departed Milwaukee with mixed cargo in overcast skies and strong winds, and collided with the towing cables of a fully loaded Sinclair Oil Company's barge number 12 in tow of the tug Chicago, 3 miles off of Milwaukee Harbor. And she sank in just about 90 feet of water. This was the third round trip for the season between ports of the lower Great Lakes in Europe, and she was outbound from Milwaukee to the lower ports. She had 30 crew members who were rescued by the Milwaukee Coast Guard cutter Hollyhock. The owners of the Prins Willem filed suit against Sinclair for $2 million in damages, alleging that the barge was not equipped with running lights. The tug was inadequately lit, and the tow was unseaworthy and carelessly handled. The Coast Guard Board of Inquiry was held, which found both captains to be in fault and blamed for this accident. Here you can see in one of the cargo holds just how dark it is, which I think is important. I've got 2 lights going, and I know I just said that my primary light is not at its full intensity, but I've got a second light that's just flooding with a floodlight of light with a lot more lumens as well, and you can just see how little it's helping. So if you're going to check out the cargo holds at all, be extra aware how easy it is to get lost as you think you're going into some crevice, and you might be going deeper into the ship than you realize. So you want to make sure that you're running a line, that you're within the light of day, that you can see how to get out. And even just going into the cargo holds, while it's a fairly easy penetration, it's not something that you should be doing unless you are properly trained, certified, experienced, comfortable with. You'll hear people who go into shipwrecks say that all the time, and the reason is we get it. We appreciate how tempting it is to go inside and what there is to see, and how it doesn't seem like a big deal until it is. And it's at that moment that you're about to have a really bad day, or your training is going to kick in, and you're going to figure out how to improve your odds of getting out. But it's not hard to get lost inside of a shipwreck. It's not hard to get stuck, trapped inside of a shipwreck. As you'll see when I do go and penetrate inside some of the quarters, you'll see what it's like. Some of it's very open and easy to move around in, and some of it's very tight. And we forget that we're carrying all this gear, which makes us larger than we normally are. And that passageway that normally you would have walked through without a problem becomes a problem because you've got tanks on your back or side or whatever. And anyway, do I need to stress this point anymore? Stay within your training. Stay within your experience. Again, you just see how this ship, when she plowed into the bottom, just created this giant crevice. So as we go right above it here, it is flat. And this is how most of the Great Lakes have looked to me. You've got, this scattering of stuff throughout. Some of this is debris from the shipwreck, I'm sure, but most of it's just rocks and just scattered stuff. But for the most part, it's just flat. And as I turn around to look at her bow, you see the murkiness of the water. And I've described this visibility as pretty consistently it's somewhere between normal and a little worse than normal than what I've consistently experienced in this part of Lake Michigan. If you haven't dived this area before, this is what I would expect to see if I were diving this for the first time. Now, of course, your dive day, it may have better visibility, it may have worse. You may have better or worse visibility between your first dive and your second dive on the same day, but this is consistent with pretty much normal. So if you don't know what to expect, this is kind of what you should. There are typically more than one anchor lines on the Willie because this is such a popular wreck. In May of 2026, there were two. One was on the stern, and the other kind of midship. We tied in midship. Once she sank, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers determined that a part of the wreckage was a hazard to navigation because it was shallower than 40 feet. Apparently, that's what creates the hazard. And because of that, the Army Corps requested bids for contractors to either clean up the entire wreck or portions thereof so that it wouldn't be an obstruction. The bid was won by a person who lived in the Milwaukee area named Max Gene Nohl. He was a diver, an engineer, inventor, entrepreneur, underwater filmmaker, lecturer, and a world record holder, having recorded a dive to 420 feet in 1937. Anyway, Nohl won the bid for $50,000. And gained rights to ownership of the wreck. The work turned out to be incredibly easy. Only protruding gangplanks needed to be removed, and the contract was fulfilled the following spring. The Army Corps of Engineers felt it was too easy and didn't warrant the pay. Apparently they could make that decision. They threatened to take Nohl to court, but after a year, the suit was settled for $46,000 out of court. Most importantly, Max Nohl retained ownership of the wreck. His original goal was not to profit off the bid of the wreck, but to raise the Prins Willem and make his profit selling off the vessel that could be made whole again. Apparently it was easy to take away the navigational hazards, but raising her proved much more difficult. Yeah, she still sits here at the bottom. Now I want to show you what I'm doing here. I'll get back to talking about this particular dive, because if you haven't figured this out already on your own, not this part right here, forget this part here, I'm just getting a view inside one of the rooms. But this part here is a walkway that was along the exterior of the ship. And all of those openings, kind of up in the upper right corner, are large enough that a diver can swim out of or in from. So if you want to do a little penetration, and I'm not advising that you do, stay within your training, blah, blah, blah. But this is kind of a fun place to do it. It gives you a sense as to what it's like to be inside. But you have ample ways of getting out. You can, just turn right. It's really the way. It reminds me of the genie on the magic carpet of Aladdin, of Disney's Aladdin movie. In the event of an emergency, exits are here, 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 and here. So again, if you've got some experience and you feel comfortable doing so, that may be a place to check out that walkway / swim through now. We've got another layer up the top. So back to our character Max Nohl. Unfortunately, he died in a car crash in early 1960. Up to that point, he had started several businesses and spent most of his time trying to salvage the Willie. After his death, his beneficiaries auctioned off the Prins Willem, the only known auction of a sunken vessel, and the new owner, General Fox Extinguisher Company, also tried to salvage the vessel, but again without success. They ended up selling the Prins Willem back to the trust for $1,000 for liability reasons. Today, with the passing of the Abandoned Shipwreck Act of 1987, this well-known wreck diving destination is owned by the state of Wisconsin and managed by the Wisconsin Historical Society for all to enjoy, although I would suggest that you probably need to be a scuba diver to enjoy this, because, I don't know, when you're sitting on a boat on the surface, it's hard to get a good enjoyment of it. So I'm probably going to butcher this name, but Evinrude Motors? E-V-I-N-R-U-D-E. And Evinrude Motors? They wanted to salvage some of the motors off of the Willie to use her as a PR campaign. The hype would have been after it having been submerged at the bottom of Lake Michigan for years, the motors would start easily with minor maintenance work. And the hope was to do a similar campaign with the jukeboxes. Wurlitzer had jukeboxes on and pinball machines on the Willie as part of the cargo. They hoped to bring them up, and at the time of Max's death in 1960, two major television networks were bidding for the rights of a spectacular of its rising. Again, something must have thwarted that, because you can dive the engine room today. In fact, again, in May of 2026, there was a line that still ran to the engines if you wanted to check those out. I do not do that on this dive, but stay tuned. More dives are coming this season on the Willie, and that is certainly a place that I would like to investigate. Again, you can just get a sense of the darkness and how easy it would be to turn and go just a little bit deeper into the wreck, and not have any way of seeing daylight real quick. So do what you were trained to do. But surely you can get a sense as to why divers of all levels enjoy this wreck. Recreational divers going on their first shipwreck dive in the Great Lakes, this is a great option. It's sitting at an appropriate depth. You don't have to go to the bottom. You can stay higher up and still see a lot of this wreck. It's just interesting. All right, I've seen enough of the outside. Let's go check out the inside of this wreck, shall we? As you can see, it seems like a lot of big open space. You've got some pieces of furniture that are still kind of skewing about there. But there's not a lot to see. I've certainly been on better wrecks as far as the artifacts inside. My suspicion is that a lot of the stuff that has been in here has been damaged by the sinking, damaged by the years underwater. But I also suspect that a lot of stuff has been salvaged. Back in the day, getting stuff out of these wrecks was a very normal thing to do. Now it is against federal law to take anything off of the Great Lakes shipwrecks, or anything out of the Great Lakes, I believe. So leave it alone. Let future divers enjoy it. Of course, it still happens, but it doesn't happen as often, and it is not permitted by federal law. And we'll just leave it at that, because speaking opinions will open lots of doors to differing opinions and lots of debate and discussion and name-calling and hate, and there's enough of that online. We don't need to contribute to it. Needless to say, if you've had those conversations, you probably have an opinion of your own, and just like the zebra and quagga-mussels, there's pros and cons to every opinion. There's legitimate things to take into consideration, but until the rules change, I choose to take only pictures and leave only bubbles. And having said that, I'm going to pick up this sign. This caught my attention. It obviously didn't go down with the ship, I don't think. This was put there by divers after the fact. And I stirred up so much muck that I still couldn't read it, so I set it back down. I didn't take it with me. But the camera didn't capture it, but I set it back down, and there was so much muck that I stirred up from that you couldn't see anything. So I'm exiting, and my plan was to come back and get see what that sign read later, and unfortunately I did not take close enough attention to where that sign was. I'm watching it now so I know where to go back on future dives, but I never got back to it on this particular dive. So we're going to be left to wonder what that sign read until we go back down again. So today the Prince Willem is without question one of the most visited wrecks in Wisconsin. She's close to Milwaukee Harbor, and there are a plentitude of charters that operate from that city. I'm not sure that a plentitude is the right word that I would use, but I know of several. With good water conditioners, the reasonably shallow depth, it makes a list of a lot of top 5 dive sites in the U.S. popular with scuba diving magazines. She's mostly intact, resting on her side in about 80 feet of water. It is a clay bottom. If you wonder what the stuff that we're seeing on the bottom is kind of made up of, it's a lot of clay. The ship's machinery and cargo, which included printing presses, automobile parts, twine, and band instruments, are largely intact. There's large hatch openings. Let's try that again. Large open hatches may be found on the deck. Large tanks used to salvage during salvage attempts may be found alongside of the wreck. There's just a lot to enjoy on this thing. And to give credit again, wisconsinshipwrecks.org. Fantastic website. It's where I'm getting most of this information that I'm sharing with you. But it's well worth checking out, wisconsinshipwrecks.org. And I don't know that I found a shipwreck yet that's been discovered more than 3 years ago that is not on this website. I'm sure there are. I'm just not aware of them. They're not any that I've looked for. And a team of Wisconsin underwater archaeologists are just crushing it currently. I don't think they go into water without finding a new shipwreck on every other dive. I'm exaggerating a little bit. It's probably every third. Now I'm interested. I'm interested in finding the printing presses, the automotive parts, the twine. Twine? Twine wouldn't even be there anymore. I don't understand the twine. But the band instruments, that's kind of got me most interested. I'm not really a cars guy. The printing press, to find a printing press and band instruments on this wreck, that's something I'm going to have to investigate. Here you can see barrels. Maybe these things are inside of the barrels? I don't think you could store a tube inside of a barrel, but a bunch of clarinets. Something tells me the barrels aren't storing the band instruments. My last dive on the Willie, and I don't know if I ended up posting this or not. I don't think I did because visibility was so poor on this particular day. But I can't remember if the thoughts that I'm remembering right now are things that I wrote in my log or things that I put in a video, but visibility was just absolutely awful. It was probably the worst visibility I'd ever seen on the Great Lakes. I mean, it was near silt-out conditions. But we went and we did our dive anyway, had a good time, but did not seem nearly as much as I'm seeing today. Here are some fellow divers, looking sexy. This is why I enjoy recording my dives and coming back and watching them. I've got so many more dives planned now on this wreck. Things that I'm going to be looking for, things that I want, areas that I want to go investigate. Just watching the dive, seeing, doing the overview on one dive and making multiple plans from that. I don't know, it's a system that works well for me. Here you can see just all the stuff that's just thrown into the corner of the room. I mean, that's gravity working in its favor there. Just to our right, the right side of the screen, that down now was the starboard side. We're now pointing upward toward the port side of the wreck. And just a lot of large open space, which surprised me, honestly. I was expecting furniture to have been bolted to the floor. That would still be in place. Something. This just looks like an abandoned Walmart. Checking out another diver, seeing what he's up to. And we're back outside of the wreck. And there's my staged 50%. In fact, we're also outside of that walkway that I talked about earlier in the video. Like I said, I'm carrying two lights, and the flood one that I'm carrying is right next to my primary light, the spot. I think you might see it right there. And it's not an amazingly bright floodlight. It's, you know, it's a floodlight that you would get, you know, it's a video light that you would get at most any local dive shop. That level of intensity. And so it's a light that you very well may be carrying on whatever dive you're going on. But I got some friends with much brighter lights, you know, true video lights that light up rooms of caves, and boy, I'm envious, because those pictures would have turned out so much better. That video would have turned out so much better if I had a better light, but dang, those things are expensive. One of my good friends, he found one of those lights on a Milwaukee shipwreck. He looked down and said, "This doesn't look like it belongs here," and it didn't. It's clearly a light. It's not that old, and so that's now part of his collection. He spent a few dollars to get the charger, and I don't know, maybe he had to get a new battery. I don't even know if he had to do that, honestly. But it wasn't part of the shipwreck, and so he was allowed to bring it up and check the different people on his boat. No one lost one on that charter. Asked around for a while, tried to do the right thing and get it back to its owner, because he's a good guy. There you see my floodlight next to my spotlight. Never got claimed, so he's happier for it. And I'm happier for it when I go diving with him, because boy, does he light everything up. In fact, just saying that now, I'm thinking that may be the next thing I need to save for. Don't tell my wife. It's a flashlight, honey. How much could it have cost? As I'm watching, one of the things I'm noting is that I'm really, well, there's a passageway that a friend told me about that he believes you can't get through unless you're side mount, and I can't remember if this was on the Willie or another wreck. And part of what I'm doing right now is I want to find that passageway, what I think to be that passageway, and I've got a plan to see. I have a plan. I'm going to leave it at that. But I am kind of focused on looking for that passageway. And in hindsight, I wish I would have been focused on really checking out the cargo more. Like I said, the printing presses, the band instruments, depending on what parts, the automobile parts could be real interesting for me to watch, to look at. But I've got a little bit of tunnel vision, pun intended there as well, with what my buddy has described to me as the passageway that he was able to get through with his side mount system. I'm not side mount, I'm back mount. I've got a chest-mounted rebreather, the Choptima, and I've got a smaller tank on my back because it's appropriate for my dive and my dive plan. So I thought maybe with the smaller tank on my back and Supermaning the Choptima, I could get through it. Mostly I wanted to identify it. I guess I am going to talk more about it. I wanted to find it and then I'd identify it so that I could get a better sense as to whether or not I want to try getting through there on future dives. There's a ladder. I know that's obvious. I'm just trying to get myself off that topic. Get my mind to shift so I don't keep talking about it. It's not something you should try. It's probably not something I should try. like I said, I've been diving a rebreather. And so if you've been watching my NDL this whole time, please know that I am breathing a much richer gas than you're probably going to be, unless you're also on a rebreather. But this is a richer gas than I would have been on nitrox. A richer blend, higher percentage of O2. I shouldn't say it is than if you'd be on nitrox. You could certainly match what I was doing on nitrox, but not as consistently as I did on this dive, that's for sure. And let's say it this way. If you know, you know. And if you don't know, even on nitrox, you should expect less of an NDL than what you're seeing here on my screen. This is me enjoying the benefits of a rebreather. And the water temperature is such, I mean, it's cold. It's about 5 degrees colder than the Great Lakes typically are throughout the season on the bottom. On the bottom, you can consistently expect it to be between 42 and 46 degrees. And but this particular dive, it's a bit colder. And I'm feeling it. I've got undergarments and heated vest and all of that. But I'm feeling it. And so while I could have done a second dive, my plan all along was to do one long dive. And I've seen a lot of the wreck at this point. I've enjoyed a lot of the wreck at this point. I'm starting to get cold at this point. And so I'm deciding to start making my way toward the last part of my dive. And I guess the reason I say this is that if you're more of a recreational diver looking to, use this to help make your plan, don't expect, even if you burn down a couple of tanks, that your NDL is going to remain the same that mine has been. And I certainly don't think you could do this on an aluminum 80, and if you can, good for you, because we're at the 50-minute mark at this point, and if you're still breathing an aluminum 80 at 50 minutes at this depth, I'm jealous. That, or you're on your last molecule of air, and that may have been a mistake, because you're not at the anchor point yet. As you can see, I've gotten quite a bit shallower as I'm checking out the radio tower. I'm guessing is at least part of the function of what we're seeing here. So I'm getting rid of some gas out of my breather. You know, what's interesting, what just occurred to me, is that on Dad's birthday, October 14th, 1954, the Willem collided with the towing cables of a fully loaded Sinclair Oil Company barge, number 12. I don't know that I saw where the damage was. I'm guessing on the starboard side, which is why it's covered in the clay of the bottom of the lake. But there's another point for a future dive. Go looking for where the damage would have been if it collided. I'm guessing that the Willie struck the cables, so maybe more in the front, the bow of the ship. All right, another plan taking shape. Find the damage of the Willie. What sank it? No, we know what sank her, but what does that damage look like today? If you're still watching, I appreciate it. You're either a glutton for punishment, you love this wreck, or you are really planning your next dive on her. And I appreciate your commitment to learning this wreck before you go down on her. It's a good sign that you and I would be good dive buddies. Reach out, let's do a dive together. Now here, where I should be looking for the damage caused by those cables, what I'm actually looking for is the name, Prins Willem. The historical photos that I put up at the beginning of the video, you don't see her name on those areas. It was more on midship, if I'm not mistaken. You know what would be helpful right now as I make my way to the stern to see if her name's there? A scooter. But that's okay. A little workout's never a bad thing. Burn some calories as my fellow divers on the boat and I all went out for lunch afterward, which I think is mandatory. Well, I'll spoiler alert this for you guys. I do not find the name, although I find where it might have been at one point. Maybe it's there. I don't think so. I didn't see it. basically I go there, I look for that plaque again a little bit, but I didn't find it a second time. And then I start to make my way up to the surface. So at this point, the most interesting part of the dive, at least as I'm concerned, is behind us. As I said, I planned a long dive, and so part of me is trying to figure out if I want to keep diving or if the water temperature is getting to me. And I decided the water temperature was starting to get to me. What I didn't share is, despite having checked everything, what didn't work on this dive was my heated vest. I went to turn it on shortly into the dive, and nothing. Tried it again, and nothing. Tried it much later on in the dive, and nothing. So I'm actually very pleased. I mean, that was a blessing and a curse for this dive, because it would have made me more comfortable and would have extended my dive. But it also taught me that the undergarments that I'm wearing were able to comfortably give me an hour of bottom time in roughly 39-degree water, which is that's good to know. That's important information for me. So add a heated vest, and who knows how much longer I could stay down. After the dive, I checked, and the vest worked fine. I don't know what went wrong on the dive itself, but it worked before the dive, and it worked after the dive. It just didn't work during the dive. And that really is the most important time that I need it to work. Did you catch a reference to a TV show there from the 90s? Changed the words a little bit, but you know how to make the reservation, you just don't know how to hold the reservation. And that really is the most important part of the reservation. How about I give you another 80s reference, a classic Chicago film reference. I know we're in Milwaukee waters, but they're close enough to Chicago, and I'm a Chicago person, not Milwaukee. As I'm finning my way to the stern of the boat, and regretting my life choice not to bring my scooter with me, I can just tell you this. If you have the means, I highly suggest you get one. Their sole choice. Got the movie? All right, I'll give you one more clue. Save Ferris. A friend who dives mostly in oceans asked me if the Great Lakes have currents. The size of the Great Lakes allow for there to be currents, and I don't really have a great answer to that. I think they do, but I've not experienced a current in the Great Lakes nearly as notable as I have in the ocean. So if there's a current on this dive, it isn't such that I was, zipping one way and really having to work to get the other way. I think I was just swimming against the current, because it seemed like I was working a little bit harder as I watched the video than when I was going toward the bow. But so there may be currents, but I have not experienced them to be so dramatic that I get winded or even take serious note of having to work against them. So you kind of have that area there that's kind of been cleared of zebra and quagga mussels, and I'm wondering if maybe, in fact I kind of think maybe you can see some letters there. Even as I watch the video, maybe And that's about as close as I can get as to whether or not the name was there. Early in the video, I'm still looking for that name. I still don't see it. I'm not sure why I'm focused on it. I kind of see it. Do I see it, or do I just want to see it and so therefore I see it? I'm not sure. What do you think? Comment section below. Blah, blah, blah. Like, subscribe, all that stuff I'm supposed to say as a YouTuber. I tried to get a shot of the propeller. Most of it's under the clay. That was at the very early start of the dive when I first made my way to this part of the wreck about an hour ago. So it's there. You can kind of position your head to get in and get a view of it. But it's not something that you're going to get a nice picture with you in the propeller. Sorry. Now here I come looking for that plaque that I left behind again, and no, this wasn't where it was. Oh. Look, I'm inside of a shipwreck. There's the second anchor line on the wreck in May of 26. That may have been moved by the time you dived this wreck. So even though I don't have any decompression obligation, as I make my way back, I'm going to grab my staged 50% bottle, start making my way up the anchor line, and even though I don't have a decompression obligation, I'm still going to do my safety stop because it's cheap insurance to increase your safety margin on the dive. I like being underwater. So that's not a problem, and I'm not that cold. So why on earth would I not do a safety stop and just create a little extra safety margin for myself? And that's how the video ends. Thank you for watching this entire video. I'm surprised you did, honestly. I would have. In fact, I did. I did just now. But like I said, this is the video that I'm looking for when I'm investigating a shipwreck to go dive. I hope it has allowed you to really get a sense as to what this wreck is like underwater, what you're looking at, I hope it helps you plan your dive so that you can dive your plan. Anyway, hope to dive with you sometime if you're not a jerk. It's my rule. I'll dive with anyone. Any dive that I'm confident they're qualified to dive and that I feel confident that I'm qualified to dive. All right, you just caught me. I was lying. It was 55%, not 50%. It wasn't a great mix. Yeah, I don't care if we're diving the local quarry or the Atlantic. As long as I'm comfortable doing the dive and properly trained for the dive, and I'm confident you're properly trained and comfortable doing the dive, I'll dive with anyone as long as they're not a jerk. No jerks. That's my rule. I think it's a good rule. Makes for a better day. All right, I'm clipping on that bottle. Almost there. And then I'm going to make my way up the anchor line. Yeah, here I go. Not yet. Apparently I'm having a little bit of a problem with that bottle. Overall, I really like the Choptima, but it does It does take some getting used to of losing the space on your chest that's normally pretty open. Any chest-mounted rebreather is going to make that area congested, and I've gotten used to it. I've made it work very well for me. I like it a lot, but that is like everything. That's the downside. Everything's got pros and cons, right? That's the downside of the chest-mounted rebreather. On the other hand, I really liked having a smaller bottle on my back, and that's how I carried my bailout. Staged at 50%. All I needed to do was get to the line, and at the line I could start breathing that 50% basically, 55%. And that was my bailout plan if I needed to. Here's another diver I'm gonna spend a little safety time with, and then surface. And little bragging point for me here that I'm proud of. I was the first in the water, and I'll be the last out. And that's always a good thing to be, first in, last out. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video and hope it was helpful and informative to you. And thank you for putting up with some of my dumb jokes. Dive safe.